Good evening, Social 30, and welcome to CBC Social Studies News, Channel 12.
Today, a local man in the Calgary area infiltrated a rural farmer's field and violently dismantled a tractor, proceeding to burn the plastic parts and smash the rest of the tractor. The man, now in custody of Calgary and area, RCMP has issued a statement.
Yeah, I broke the tractor. I admit fully. They needed to be broken. I'll burn down buildings if I have to in order to get my message through. I want to reform not only Alberta, but Canada and the world. I submitted a petition to the Canadian government with thousands of signatures that called for more equality and fairness in Canada and Alberta and the world. Enough of the individual freedoms of the family farm. We don't need any more shop owners working for themselves. We don't need any more selfish, competitive people. We have sweatshops in Malaysia with the poorest working conditions in the world. These need to be improved. Not only that, but education there is just ridiculous. Private ownership of production means creates exploitation, and these poor children are subject to every day. We need a system like the Hutterites. It's the only one that works. We need a government-planned economy and the education system. We need cooperation from all, a class of society, instead of these disgustingly rich people and these disgustingly poor people. Some extreme progressive taxation would fix those. Private property like the tractor leads to selfishness. Everyone should have one if he does. We should go back to what things used to be like. You know, early societies. Everyone depended on each other to survive. Everyone cooperated. Everyone.
Wow, Dustin. And his trial is set for the end of April, I believe is what I heard?
Yeah. I wonder what'll happen. Have you ever heard of classical liberalism? Martin, you might be familiar with it. Classical liberalism is an ideology based on the principles of individualism. Private property, the rule of law, individual rights and freedoms, economic freedom, self-interest and competition. It really values the importance of human rationality and believes in minimal government intervention in the free market. It protects civil liberties and has constitutional limits on the government.
Sounds like what many of us Canadians think is a perfect system, right? Everyone's allowed to have property, rights and freedoms, a free market. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I can't see anything wrong with that.
Well, throughout history, lots of people saw things wrong with it. Starting in the early 1800s, 1811 maybe, a group of people led by Ned Ludd began to grow angry that they lost their jobs to the machines that took over their previous jobs. Now at this time, classical liberalism was in effect. The group of people called the Army of Redressers began to break into factories and break machines, the ones that took their jobs. They called their movement Luddism, and the government began to suppress them by force. They were shot, exported, and eventually in 1817, the attack stopped.
So they didn't think highly of this classical liberalism, huh?
Well, I think they didn't find it fair that the machines had taken their jobs as factory workers, but in my opinion, the entire movement was silly. Classical liberalism allows for private property and the rule of law. Even though these people were demonstrating against it, they were clearly trespassing and destroying the mill owners' machines, breaking the law. They needed to go.
Well, what was the group that popped up after them? A little less violent, I think. The Chartists?
Yeah, the Chartists, another response to classical liberalism at the time. The Chartists just wanted reform, a political and social reform. They asked for universal suffrage for men over 21, equal-sized electoral districts, secret ballot voting, pay for parliament members, and annual elections. Fair, right? At least I think so. At the time, the liberalism only included the voting of the male citizens in class in 1832. These Chartists in 1838 to 1848 asked for universal suffrage for those over 21. Sounds familiar?
Just like what we have in Canada. I think that movement was completely justified. If classical liberalism works on rights and freedoms, isn't the right to vote a basic one? Is an annual election really too much to ask? The Chartists submitted 3 charters to the British Parliament at the time. After being unsuccessful, many just disappeared or joined another movement.
The Socialists, right?
Yeah.
Utopian socialism with Robert Owen.
That's one of them.
They fought for an end to the horrible working conditions of the capitalist system. They weren't violent, but they did believe that education and better working conditions could make a happy socialist society.
Then came the Marxists. Interestingly enough, Karl Marx never actually endorsed Marxism. It's a radical socialism from that believes that history is the story of evolving class warfare. In order for an end to the capitalist system, there has to be a struggle between the workers and the employers, with the workers winning. Then, significant changes can be made to society. Communists believe that economics are the foundation of society, and factories need to be in workers' hands. Private property needs to be abolished, and centralization of factories need to occur. China and North Korea implement Marxism.
Yeah, and look at how nice life is in those nations.
Well, there's one more opposition to classic liberalism, classical conservatism. Dreamed up by Edmund Burke, he disliked the beliefs and values of classical liberalism at the time. He felt it was necessary to go back to the old way of doing things, the ways of the pre-industrial past. He believed the government not only represented the people in the present, but also the past and the future, and change couldn't come solely from the decisions of the current people.
And what was wrong with the classical liberal system in the first place? I can't see anything wrong with it.
Well, these movements were responses to liberalism. At the time, there were some problems with classical liberalism. Only middle-aged, property-owning men were allowed to vote. Women had no rights and freedoms and couldn't even vote. Workers' working conditions were pitiful, and many people were unhappy. Classical liberalism is built on good principles. The rule of law, rights and freedoms, private property, everything we take for granted. But there are some flaws in it as well.
Not that I can see.
No, there definitely is. These were noticed especially in the Great Depression. The capitalist system that had brought prosperity, cars, employment, and happiness so far began to fail. So John Keynes stepped in and suggested another response to the classical liberalism at the time, Keynesian economics.
Oh yeah, Keynesian economics, in theory, a perfectly viable solution to the extreme cycle in the free market brings. According to Keynes, a free market economy has a cycle of prosperity and depression. People spend more money during the prosperity and hoard money during depression, thus leaving supply and demand unbalanced. This, according to Keynes, could be solved by increase in interest rates, tax and decreased government spending during prosperous times, thus draining and cooling the economy. As the economy approached a recession, interest rates would decrease, government spending would increase, and taxes would decrease. This would pump money back into the economy, causing a leveling of the business cycle, avoiding extreme depression and inflation.
That sounds like a good idea, but doesn't this mean way more government intervention in the economy? That's not classical liberalist policy.
Yeah, it does. But that's part of the change that needed to occur for classical liberalism to really be beneficial to everybody. It needed to move further left on the political spectrum. Chartists were right for pushing their suffrage, the secret ballot votes, parliamentary pay, and annual elections. Those actions brought about our democracy, a very beneficial feature in North America. The socialist movement sought more government intervention in the lives of people, and they were right. Liberalism was creating two extremes of people, the poor and the rich. In Canada now, we have welfare, unemployment insurance, subsidized medical care, all of which were brought about by the socialist movement.
Yeah, but welfare gives people an excuse to be lazy and still live comfortably. Medical care is breaking the Canadian government.
Dustin, medical care is necessary. Without it, the unemployed or poverty-level citizens would die regularly of things like pneumonia because they don't have access to medical care. The average welfare amount in Alberta is about $12,000 a year. Have you ever tried to live on $12,000 a year? It's impossible.
It's true, Dustin. Even classical conservatism was justified. It's good to look at how things were done in the past. Religion used to be a huge part of people's lives. Volunteering and helping within the community was huge. Now less people attend church and less people volunteer and are willing to help. It's sad, especially when the church can help fund things that the government doesn't have to fund anymore.
Yeah, you're right. I understand when you put it in those terms. I guess welfare is good for some people. People that are unable to find employment.
Exactly.
Medical care is sure nice when I cut myself open and need stitches.
That happens a lot.
And the roads and parks and the government provides are an added bonus.
Yeah, see, by responding to classical liberalism in ways they did, all these movements created a system that treats us well. Classical liberalism moved further left on the political spectrum and brought us education, roads, parks, libraries, medical care, unemployment insurance, and welfare. Social services that are not provided by the government in a classical liberalist system. Keynes' theory helped us prevent another Great Depression, which happens every 20 years in a free market. We have suffrage for all over the age of 18, labor unions that improve working conditions and pay, and feminism has taken hold. Women have equal rights as men now.
So the responses to liberalism we talked about are all justified? our original issue, the news story, he was right?
Well, he was a little extreme, but he is just seeking change. And us, being a progressive society...
Progressive?
Progressive means that we are all able to accept change and implement it. Our modern liberal democracy is progressive. As we accept change, we even advocate it.
Progressivism's very good, but the guy in the news story was a little radical. But just like the leaders of the movements like Luddism, Chartism, Marxism, utopian socialism, Keynesian economics, and classical conservatism, even feminism, the man was only pushing for change to an already perfect system.
That concludes our panel discussion tonight. We hope that you have been well informed about the responses to classical liberalism implemented in the past, and why those movements were justified.
Good night, Social 30, and thanks for watching CBC Social Studies News on Channel 12.